Hospital was a Spanish military hospital from 1784 to 1821, and it was eventually demolished through time. Finally, a replica of the original hospital was built to house the victims during the Seminole War. However, when the city workers were about to repair the water lines and penetrated the area of the old building, they found out that the hospital was originally built on what appeared to be ancient Native American burial ground. Visitors of the Spanish Military Hospital Museum would often mention qualities of groans and shouts coming from unoccupied rooms, adding up to the chill. Real ill beds moving all over the place, beverage jars sliding crossover outside seats, and the frequenting sound of marching feet in an unfilled upstairs region. Frequently encounters of strange events and apparition sightings were told as still being experienced by guests. Paranormal experts once claimed that the place is a real breeding ground of haunted Florida soul and paranormal movement, and according to them, these sorts of haunting inclines to be the present in these zones where human feeling and emotion is or was focused all the time. Number 2. Tranquil Sanatorium, Canada. The Tranquil Sanatorium was built in 1907 as a ranch before the owners began caring for TB patients. A small community known as Tranquil was built around it. The community has its beautiful gardens, houses and a farm, a fire department and more facilities. In 1958, the hospital closed and was reopened in 1959 to treat the mentally ill. It closed permanently in 1983. However, not everything is tranquil at the sanatorium. Spirits persist in knocking about the place. The years of isolation and sadness seem to have been absorbed into the surroundings, and on occasion, those emotions can be felt by the living, and haunting encounters can occur. It would seem the Tranquil Sanatorium just might be haunted. Today, strange floating orbs throughout the facility, inexplicable feelings of sadness, unease, and dramatic temperature changes still invade the place. There have also been stories about mysterious voices and ghostly figures, one of which is that of a nurse who was brutally murdered by a patient. Number 3. Severall's Hospital, England. Severall's Hospital in Colchester, Essex, United Kingdom, was a psychiatric hospital built in 1910 to the design of architect Frank Whitmore. It opened in May 1913 and housed some 2,000 patients. Most of the buildings are in the Queen Anne style, with few architectural embellishments, typical of the Edwardian period. The most ornate building are the Administration Building, Large House, and Severall's House, formerly the Medical Superintendent's residence. The reputation for being extremely haunted in this context shouldn't come as a surprise. The hospital closed as a psychiatric hospital in the early 1990s, following the closure of other mental institutions. However, a small section remained open until 20th of March 1997 for treatment of elderly patients suffering from the effects of severe stroke. However, ghost hunters are still very interested in the place in search of encounters of the critical kind. Number 4. Whittingham Hospital, England. Whittingham Hospital was a psychiatric hospital in the parish of Whittingham near Preston, Lancashire. It opened in 1873 as the 4th Lancashire County Asylum and grew to be the largest mental hospital in Britain. However, in 1967, the hospital faced a controversy involving complaints of mistreatment in 2 male and 2 female wards in the St. Luke's division, with the worst being in Ward 16 for women. Complaints were reported such as patients being locked in small rooms under staircases, in washrooms, and outside in the airing cords, regardless of the weather. Others include patients result, both the head male nurse and matron took early retirement. The negative imagery of the hospital exists for a reason. It offers the kind of hauntings you most likely would never want to encounter. Number 5. Old Changi Hospital, Singapore. This hospital was previously known as Royal Air Force Hospital and was merged with the Tau Peo Hospital and renamed as the Changi General Hospital after it was closed in 1997. It sat abandoned for over a decade. Regarded as one of the most haunted places in Singapore, this hospital was captured by the Japanese forces during World War II and was used as a healthcare facility for the prisoners of war detained at the Changi military base nearby. The uneasy feeling of visitors were probably brought by those people who lost their lives in the hands of the Japanese and are still seeking revenge. According to some, the terrifying moments, excitement and adventures were not worth in exchange for what followed them home. Ooh. So don't go there if you don't want people to follow you home, I think. Or not people, ghosts. Number 6. Sai Ying Bun Psychiatric Hospital, Hong Kong. Built in 1892, Sai Ying Bun was also a Japanese World War II structure. The Victorian complex is rumoured to have served as an execution hall by the Japanese troops. It was later transformed into a psychiatric institution following the war, then fell into despair and was severely ruined by 2 fires which were believed to be inadvertently started by trespassers. Tales of ghostly sightings were spread since it was abandoned in the 1970s. It has come to be known as the High Street Ghost House due to the many tales of the supernatural that have emerged. Visitors have confessed the sounds of a woman crying or a loud booming sound emanating from the building. Mysterious footsteps, the reoccurring sightings of the devilish figure in traditional Chinese costume bursting into flames, specifically on the building's 2nd floor. Number 7. Clark Air Base Hospital, Philippines. The Clark Air Base Hospital was served as the air base from the early 1900s until 1991 and is now abandoned, and was cited by Ghost Hunters International as one of the most haunted places in the world. This airbase has a long, violent and often bloody history in the Philippines and is considered one of the most haunted places in the archipelago. The base also was the dwelling place to which many wounded American soldiers evacuated during the Vietnam War, and the traumas and deaths from that conflict have also left their mark on the spirit presence in the hospital. Paranormal activities are reported in the abandoned hospital, where headless apparitions and mysterious voices are simply common occurrences for the Filipinos nearby. Violent spirits observed and attested by the residents have rendered the area off limits to everyone, and in the Clark Museum nearby, the ghost of a serviceman who committed suicide still haunts the place where he hung himself. It is remarkable that the hospital is one of the few areas that the ghost hunters ever examined that was deemed disturbed. Number 8. Nocton Hall Hospital, England. Built in 1530. Wow, that's very old. Nocton Hall's background has much to tell if history is the target. It is a Grade 2 listed building in the village of Nocton in Lincolnshire, England. From a manor house, the building was later used as a convalescence home, I've never heard that word, for wounded American officers during the First World War. It was used again during the Second World War as a military hospital and has been used similarly ever since. It reverted to private use in 1980s until a major fire struck the building and left it derelict state. In another tale, it says that a young girl was murdered by the son of an owner of the place back when it was a manor house. Today, her presence has been reported by various people who have stayed at the building, haunting one particular room a person claiming to have seen the ghostly image appear in the room precisely at 4:30 a.m. Would you go there and see if the ghost is there at 4:30 a.m.? I don't know if I would. Ararat Lunatic Asylum, Australia. This ever-famous asylum in Australia is now called Arradale. It was the largest in all of Australia when it opened in 1867. Throughout its functional existence, the healthcare facility held tens of thousands of patients, including the most dangerous, hysterical and violent psychotics in the world. To feel the chills about the place, an astounding 13,000 patients died in the facility within its 130 years of service. This is enough reason for it to be named one of the most haunted places in the country. The facility reopened in 2001 as a campus after concluding its healthcare services in 1998. Would you mind taking higher education in this institute? No, I don't think I would. Number 10. Athens Mental Hospital, Ohio, USA. Originally called the Athens Lunatic Asylum. Oh my gosh, these people with the lunatic are really going for it, aren't they? The only one of the Ohio mental hospitals which still stands in anything resembling original condition is the Athens Mental Healthcare Center, now known as the Ridges. It opened its doors in 1874, and over the years, the hospital underwent no fewer than 9 official name changes, including the Athens Hospital for the Insane, and it stayed in operation until 1993. History states that there are over 1,900 unidentified patients buried in the grounds of the hospital, notorious for the lobotomy procedures they undertook. Each headstone is marked by number only, no names attached. Sometime after, a large portion of the grounds was given to the Ohio University. The hospital closed down in 1993, but one thing that gives this hospital an extra creep factor up for this time in the 1978 disappearance of a female patient. Her corpse was only discovered a year later in an abandoned ward where stains of the tragic scene remained visible for more than 3 decades later. Wow, you would think that they would get rid of that. Number 11. Beechworth Lunatic Asylum, Australia. Again with the lunatic. Beechworth Lunatic Asylum, formerly known as the Haunted Mayday Hills Lunatic Asylum, is a discommissioned hospital in Victoria, Australia. Both Beechworth and Ararat were opened in the same year after Victoria's lone mental institution suffered became overcrowded. The facility lasted for 128 years and closed its doors in 1995. Ghost tours now run in the building as visitors are regaled with terrifying tales, including the story of James Kelly, uncle of the notorious bushranger Ned Kelly. Charged with attempted murder, he was initially sentenced to death in June 1863, but was downgraded to 10 years hard labour. He was released from jail and to be sent to the Ararat Lunatic Asylum and later transferred to the Beechworth Asylum, where he died on August 26, 1903. More than 9,000 inmates lost their lives within the walls of this asylum, including a young girl who was mysteriously thrown from a high window, with the reason never being explained. No worries though, she is either friendly or oblivious towards the living. That seems quite sad if she's oblivious. Number 12. Taunton State Hospital, Massachusetts, USA. Built in 1854, the Taunton State Hospital was a psychiatric hospital located in Taunton, Massachusetts, and it brags a horrible yet alarming history. You would understand the entire story if you were aware of the hospital's most famous patient, Jane Tobin, a serial killer who confessed to having murdered at least 31 people while working as a nurse. However, the story involving the people who ran the hospital is even more terrifying any of the criminally insane patients it housed. Tales that are beyond our imagination has often been the subject of talk, including satanic rituals that have been carried out in the basement by the doctors and nurses using the unwilling patients for the proceedings. Since then, it is believed that the basement area has long been consumed by a shadowy figure who would come out and crawl on the walls to watch the patients in the hospital. That sounds very creepy. And number 13, I think we have all heard of this one. Waverly Hills Sanatorium, Kentucky, USA. Located in southwestern Louisville, Jefferson County, Kentucky, the Waverly Hills Sanatorium is a closed sanatorium that opened in 1910 as a two-story hospital to accommodate 40 to 50 TB patients. The hospital immediately became overcrowded, though, and with donations of money and land, a new hospital was started in 1924. Though death estimates vary widely, at least 6,000 people died at Waverly Hills during its 50-plus years in operation, and after all of the death, pain and agony within these walls, Waverly Hills is considered to be one of the most haunted places in the country. I would bet that it's probably one of the most haunted places in the world with the stories that come out of there. Today, the hospital is briefly known for its primary purpose in the past, but made a great name for being haunted. Ghost stories began to circulate, like the little girl who was seen running up and down the third floor solarium, the little boy Timmy who was spotted with a leather ball, the hearse that appeared in the back of the building dropping off coffins, the woman with the bleeding wrists who cried for help, and a man in a white coat who has been seen walking towards the kitchen, and the smell of cooking food that sometimes wafts throughout the room. Visitors told of banging doors, lights in the windows when there should be none, mysterious sounds, and eerie footsteps in the hallways and empty rooms. Apart from these unnamed apparitions, the tales involving the fifth floor of the building are the most widely reported. Stories say that in 1928, the head nurse was found dead in room 502. She allegedly committed suicide by hanging herself from an exposed pipe or light fixture. She was 29 years old at the time of her death, and supposedly devastated, pregnant, but unmarried. Her depression over the situation led her to take her life. It's unknown how long she may have been hanging in the room before the body was discovered, and this would not be the only tragedy that would occur in that room. Another creepy legend involves another nurse who worked in room 502 and was said to have jumped over the window 4 years later. No one knows the exact reason why she would have done this, but many speculated that she might have been pushed over the edge. There are no records to indicate this, but rumours continue to persist. Regardless of the tale, many Waverly visitors are convinced that an anguished entity lurks in room 502. So those were some of the most haunted hospitals, asylums in the world. Most of them were in America, but you know. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you have a creepy rest of your day or evening wherever you are, and I shall see